So there, and let's put it forward. So we're smoothing it, and we're making it look smooth, but we're compressing the clay together. So on the molecular level, the particles of clay are getting closer together, and clay has a plate-like structure. It's a 5-sided plate. So when you wedge it and roll them, they're going all different direction, and then when you smooth it, when you compress them, they all align on the surface. So you get that little bit of a reflective, that's because all those plates are aligned. So you get that look, but then also you get some strength from it, molecular strength. You're kind of linking them together, which helps for little cracks from drying. So times when that's extra important on a slab is if you're going to use this and have it be a big platter, and you want this slab to kind of span a long distance, sometimes when that dries, it'll find a place to crack right in the middle for no apparent reason, but it's the way the clay plates are kind of all going every which direction. So compressing is your best form of defense against those types of cracks. So compressing and smoothing, and then finally, the other thing that you do to give it some strength is the clay canvas. Or the canvas leaves this texture in the clay that has threads going one way and then threads going the other way. So you have these kind of like micro fault lines that as you start to bend it, even though there's a lot of water in there, it'll start to get that little cracking on the surface. So you smooth past that. So that's a whole bunch of reasons, besides the fact that it's a pet peeve of mine, to have that canvas texture in there, because it's an unintentional texture. It means you rolled it on a piece of canvas, you didn't think about like, oh, I want that canvas texture, you just left it because it was there. So at least what you've done here as the artist, as the maker, is giving yourself a purposefully smooth surface, and most likely you'll go in and carve some, you'll paint slip on there, you'll press decoration in there, but you'll be putting on your purposeful textures over top of that. So I think it's a pretty important thing to do. Okay, so before I make the mug, let's talk a little bit about these pieces. And then grab the thread. Random things made with slabs. And these don't even include the process of taking a slab and putting it over a mold or into a mold, which we have all of these for. That has its own challenges. It really does deserve its own 20-minute demo or whatever, but it's sort of so straightforward that the best thing to do is try it and fail, and then the next time okay, so what to build out of a slab? We have some simple things here: cutting apart, cutting different geometric shapes, matching for the front and back, rectangles for the side, rectangle for the bottom, and then this, we cut this little detail, scored and attached it there, keeping in mind that that gives that double thickness right there with that slab on there, so as it dries, a crack would like to form right along that area. Same thing here, 3 rectangles, a triangle for the bottom. The legs are made out of a slab that's kind of just bent over that way. So you get that idea. This is sort of same process, just using a little bit more of an organic shape. Maybe putting newspaper in there to kind of give it this this volume as you go, and then kind of cutting the shape for the bottom, scoring and attaching and then smoothing together all of these things, putting the texture in there. This is pretty straightforward. It's just basically like a big rectangle that was kind of brought around in this tripod form. This is the seam where it was brought together. They sharpened it to a point and then smoothed it really well so that you can tell where the seam is, but it's pretty well disappeared. And then on the top here with these, it would just kind of come up like this. If you cut a dart out of the clay, you can bring one side down and the other side down. This one has a smooth surface from burnishing on it, which is kind of like if you do that smoothing after it's leather hard, you push those plates even closer together and get even more of a shine by doing that. This piece is similar to this in that it was a big rectangle and then brought together to make the 3 sides. And then again with the sides going straight up like this, cut the darts in there, fold one over, fold the other over, so you get the top part. And then in the bottom, you can kind of bring those together, slowly kind of bring them together, and then use a coil to fill in the shape. You can see on the inside there's a little bit of a space where that came together wasn't filled in, so just filling it in with a little extra clay. And then the lid for this one is a circle, and then you cut a triangle out, and then when you bring it together you get that little conical form. So you can put that on there. this is pretty similar to what I'm going to do today. It's a taller, skinnier version of the same idea. This one, the seam is right here, really obvious because they left it really obvious. So it's kind of the two different directions to go with the seam. Is try to make it disappear. This is the same as this. This is using a PVC pipe form like I'm going to do in a minute here. This is sort of more freehand, but both of them are just slabs kind of wrapped around and then a circle for the bottom. The seam here, but it's sort of merged together and tried to make it disappear. This one, they use this big tool and sort of celebrated the seam, one way to put it, I guess. It's really there. But using a wood tool still to go in between there and smooth that together to kind of complete the transition. You want to be able to smooth both sides of everything, but something like this, you can't get your fingers down in there, you probably don't have a tool that's long enough, so that means your score marks, your pressure, and smoothing this side are even more important because you can't get in there to do the other side. And this one, maybe a little more free form and a little harder to follow, but the body of this, without this on there, is essentially just a cylinder. And then again, I talked about with the hand, is you cut the dart out. So you cut that triangle out, bring that together. It's going to really bring that in and give you that there. 3 darts on the bottom, here, here, and here, to bring that in, and then a circle for the, well, really a strip for the foot. When these darts were put together, then the artist also went in with this tool to trace this design in there, but that pushed the clay in slightly and then pushed out slightly from the inside, and you can tell because it's sort of cracking open a little bit, but just to give it a little more volume. So, you know, kind of like the thing I showed you last week, putting the coils on there and then pinching it and smoothing and kind of combining those together. This sort of combines everything together because it's got that pushing and pulling that you do when you pinch clay. And then you can see the shape for this and how it will be cut out in slab, and then a coil for the handle. It's got a lot of interesting movement going on. The cool thing about like something like this, or talking about the lid for this, a circle with a triangle cut out, you can do all this stuff with paper for geometric shapes. Anything you can cut out of paper and tape together, you can then untape it and take those pieces of paper and use them as templates. So you can figure out a way to make something really interesting at home when you can like stumble over it a little bit, figure it out, think about what might be cool, and then you can bring that paper in here and make it into clay. I mean, you have 3 hours here and you want to look cool. So, all about looking cool. Alright, so let me grab my PVC pipe and okay, so PVC pipe, make a cylinder, make a circle for the bottom, and then make a handle. PVC pipe is plastic, obviously. Plastic, glass, anything non-porous clay will stick to pretty much permanently. So you have to put a piece of newspaper around it so that you can pull the pipe right out of the middle once you've got clay wrapped around. So start that process. Get 1 sheet of paper as opposed to like a section of paper, because I want to wrap this fairly cleanly around here so that there aren't many, if any, wrinkles in it. Because any wrinkle in the paper is going to show up in the clay. It's also going to make it harder for me to wrap the clay tightly around this, which you want to do. And then when I tape it, I always use just a couple pieces of tape. One, because it saves tape. I'm the guy that buys it, so I try to save it. But also because the clay will stick to the tape, so if I have a big piece of tape there, it might have a little issue. Really, I'm just trying to get you to save the tape. The cheapskate tape. Okay, so what I'm going to do is cut a long rectangle that will give me the height of my mug and hopefully wrap all the way around this pipe. But first I need to make sure that I have enough before I start cutting. A few things more frustrating than getting to the last piece and you need a circle of your slab, and because of the way that you arranged it, you don't have enough, so you have to go back a roll of slab and compress it. It's just a pain. Another good thing about the paper, if you have your shapes, you can like lay them out and figure out where you need them. So I have this little flat paper here. I'll just put it, I need to cut a 90 degree, so then if I start there and I roll it this way, will I have enough? Yes, I have plenty. So you can actually see where the paper made a little mark. So that's how long it is. I'm kind of a mixture of like how a woodworker measures twice, cut once. I have a mixture of that and hold it up there and measure it kind of personality. So it is always better for me when I tap into that measure twice, cut once part of my personality. I mess up a lot less, but it's clay, so you can smush it. So don't worry about it. But I'm going to cut a nice starting edge there, and now I'm going to cut a nice bottom edge.
Is there a rule on how much you should give based on what you want the bottom of the finished product to look like? Right, because you need some to pinch, right? To the height.
With the height? No.
Or top, doesn't matter.
How much you should give? What do you mean give?
So if you wanted this to be 5 inches,
yeah,
should you cut your
slab
5 and a half?
5 and a half. You know, the way that I do it, it's there is this starts at 4 inches. I think this one may have started at this one probably started at 5 inches. Yeah, so this one's 3 7/8. This one's 4 3/4. Yeah, so because of that, not really. I usually it's 4 inches on the small side, 6 inches, or you know maybe 7 inches for like a beer stein. But yeah, not really. Not really is the answer to that question. How about that for an answer?
I like that.
All right, so it is an answer. So now we will do that part. We'll set the height. I've kind of been liking the shorter height, so let's do that. 4 inches. Why not?
And a big pocket right now, like my pocket in the morning.
I just like to fill it up a few times, so I feel like more dainty. I work for dainty.
You know, the 6 feet tall dainty's just not gonna happen.
It just doesn't happen. Yeah, that's why I come in. Someone told me I make manly artwork once. They like tried to phrase it as a compliment. Your artwork is so manly. Very manly, man. So, I was in college still, so I didn't know how to take it out. Thought I had to know that.
That's your first problem.
That's your first problem. Alright, so I measured 4 inches up here, measured 4 inches over here, and then I just cut that top part. So now I've got way longer than I need. I'm going to put the ruler back right on the edge here so I can cut a 45-degree angle in the clay. And then when I find my length, I'll cut a 45-degree angle over here. And that just gives me a little bit easier way to put that seam together and have it hitting a little better. So cutting in there. And let's be honest, it's 45-ish. I'm just cutting at an angle. So I got that, and then now I can roll this thing again for my measurement. So I'll put that piece of paper, the edge of the paper there, and then stop there. And I've learned over time that I need to give myself about 1/4 of an inch. So what does that mean then? Let's see. It's at about 11 inches there. I'll mark it. Mark it down here. And then when I put this on here, that's why. So I always get confused when I try to remember like how things fold over each other. But if I cut the 45-degree angle this way, I want to cut it the same way on the other side. So if you can remember that, cut it the same way. You don't have to try to figure out. Go. So while this one's exposed, I will just use my, this is the scoring tool, the Lux, you see.
Very fancy.
I do sell this one too. I don't like to seem like a salesman, so when I'm like, I've got this one, nice. I saw it in the store and I was like, oh, I
Yeah, I used that. It's called a baby rake.
And then I used it and it's so worth the money. It's awesome. Alright, so kind of carefully lift this up, being careful that when I put my fingers under there not to dent it too much, and just trying to do that throughout the process. When you're working with your clay, if you set it down on clay boogers, then those are going to be embedded in your piece. If you put your ruler on it, it puts an angle on there, it's got to be aware of those things. So score, any water on the piece. So we score the exposed side, a little bit of water there. Roll this around. And as if I've done this 15 or 16 times before, it lines up just right. 45 degrees, kind of butting together. And then just kind of smush it. Start by getting the pressure that I need. I've got the score marks, I've got the water. Now I need the pressure. And then I need to smooth it. I don't want too much of that extra clay to be just pushed into the clay because that extra thickness will be noticeable. Let it scrape off a little bit, go back to smoothing it. Just get it together. It's all about, this is where the 45 degrees really helps, because if you butt two 90s together, then you have to smooth this way, that way, and you just don't have enough clay usually, but with that 45, you just smooth the one direction and you know that you're getting a lot of pressure on the seam. So we've got that. Now once we have this clay wrapped around, we now have the measurement, the diameter that we need for the base, which just so happens to be perfectly right here. So I'll set that on there. And I'll cut the circle out. So if you try to skip ahead of this set and you cut your circle and your rectangle before you put it together, you will probably be using the pipe to measure your circle, which will make it too small. You need the circle for the bottom to be slightly wider, if anything. And this is where actually that any extra clay that I give myself to give that little inch at the bottom is that little bit of clay that I'm leaving there. So dirt definitely doesn't have to be super exact. Take that away. Now if I peel this off, I should be able to see in there, there's just a little bit of an indent where the clay was, the thickness of the clay on the bottom, so that's where I need to score. I've made some really nice cat dishes this way too. Cat people. Just make it shorter. Thanks. This could be a dog dish. I had no interest in that.
It's different.
They're cool, yeah. With human babies, they're like, it's easier.
Yeah.
I see people walking their dog and I'm like, oh, it's a cute dog. I don't want one.
Walk them every day.
I want the kids every day.
Yeah, well, I didn't have them when the kids were young.
Alright, so we've got our score marks, our water, and now it's about pressure. So in this case, I've got the table underneath, so it's about getting some downward pressure on that. I don't want to press down on the top of that. I want to kind of grab onto the clay, sort of let my dry skin grip onto the clay, push down just a little bit to get that started. I should be able to pull that right out. The newspaper, pull from the center, and it just kind of pulls right out. So now, what I've got, oh actually, before I do that, if I can put this back in.
Ah, okay, this I want to see.
Yeah, I don't think I can have it.
Genie back in the bottle.
So this is the stumbling that you can do when there's no camera on you. One more, no. Finally, I would. The reason I like that is because normally what I'll do is go and use my wood tool to kind of smush this up. So in lieu of the PVC pipe, I'll get my finger in there and just start by getting that with that little bit of extra clay smooshed up. So on the inside, I need to smooth together. So I smooth together the seam going vertically on the outside, and now the seam on the outside horizontally. So on the inside, I've got the seam exposed there, and then I've got the one on the bottom. So starting with the one going up the side, just with my thumb on the outside for the opposite pressure. Again, now I'm going the opposite direction that I was on the outside. I'm smoothing this way. On this side, I'm smoothing this way to follow the 45. And this one just needs to be disappeared. So it doesn't take much. Just a little bit with the wood tool, and now that one's good. So for the interior seam, it's a little bit easier to demo it like this. Because this is fairly consistent with any interior seam when you're working with slabs. Doing the mug or the base, see how you set that down and you put it on the clay and then it makes it go at an angle, and don't do that to your pieces. Alright, so geometric shapes, cylinders like this. Anytime you have an interior angle that you need to fill, you need to put a little coil in there. So the reason for that, so let's do this. Cut that, scoring here, scoring here. Water. Okay, so for this, I will be able to grab onto the clay just by kind of clasping it together and get a little bit of that downward pressure that I need to smooth that together. Now when I put this slab on the top, you can always inset it just slightly so that just like this, I got a little bit of clay on the outside, and then with that I can use my wood tool and just kind of smush that up. So I can take that extra clay that I need to sort of smear that together to get that seam closed from that bottom side. Now on the inside I can't really do that because I'll be borrowing clay from this slab to smooth it into the other. And if I do that, if I just kind of go real gently and get it just enough to where I close that seam, you might get away with it, but it's a likely place for it to crack because instead of having that extra strong, you're actually making it just slightly thinner, so it might dry a little faster, might cause a crack. So you always want to, as a rule of thumb, rather than play with fire and see if it cracks or not, give yourself a little extra defense against that and use a coil. So I just cut a little strip just because it's easier to start rolling the coil. You can roll the coil however. You just need it to be real thin. And with these interior coils, I don't worry about scoring them or anything. I just dip the whole thing in water, and then I'm going to smush it in there so much that it will be blended in without any issue. So holding the coil up, or at least just letting it rest there as I push it in so it can get smushed in there and grow in length as I do that. And this is, essentially like silicone in a seam in construction world. So now that I have that, I can smooth from the top down into the bottom, and then from the middle up into the top. Sometimes, like on this, I'll probably just on the inside just use my wood tool and kind of let it have that little bit of a curve on the inside. So that curve can be there. If you don't want the curve there, if you want it to be 90 degrees, you can go in and kind of carve that 90 degrees back in there. And even if you get it to, you end up removing some of that coil, you're still not borrowing from one to smooth into the other, so it'll give you a stronger connection. So anytime you have an interior seam, including heading up vertically, so we'd score, put that there, merge it together on the outside, coils on the inside, going up that direction. This one, because it's two coming together in the same wall, it's not a corner, we don't need to do it. All that needs to do is be disappeared. So we don't have to put a coil up like that, especially when you do the 45.
You need to do a coil down there on the base of that on the inside?
Yep.
So that's what you see on the bottom is a coil. Down on the inside?
Yeah, sort of. What you see is, a smushed coil in there. So yeah, to do that, cut the coil on. Now this is when, like, if you were going to make a utensil holder, if you're going to make a flower base, something tall and skinny, you can't really do this part. You can't get a coil in there. And, if you make anything taller than 6 inches, I'd say, because this is a 6-inch tool, so you can use this tool to get into the bottom, but if it's any taller than that, you might not be able to do this, which again just makes it all more. You can make a 42-inch piece. So just dip that in there, just kind of drop it in there. Yeah, actually just dropping it in there. Cut off this a little longer, all the way around, plus that much. And then just pushed it into place. This. There's one pass around. It's not rocket science, it just takes time, and it's not, it should be pretty messy. I think one of the keys to making anything successfully out of clay is opposite pressure. So if you push on something to smooth it, make sure you have it supported from the other side. And it seems really obvious, but it's not obvious until you have issues happen because you're smoothing and you're folding your piece and you don't quite realize it. That's 2 or 3 times around and now it's smooshed together. Alright, so turn it over just real quick, start to mess with this. But I want to get that handle on there so you guys can get started pretty quick. But I just want to give this a little bit while it's so wet. Just give it a little kind of initial smoothing. Some of that. I kind of like the way that this little pushes out a little bit there. To, gives you a little glaze trap there, a little kind of idea of a foot. You always want, as a rule of thumb, when you have a vessel touching the floor, touching the table, you want just a tiny bit of an undershadow there. That little bit of lift will give it. If you make a piece and it goes straight down at 90 degrees, it just feels like it's heavier. It looks visually heavier. So that little bit of a lift is always a good idea. I'm going to need to smooth the lip quite a bit because it's sharp now. I want to round it. Notice all of these are rounded. So that's a matter of beveling the inside, beveling the outside, and that's kind of a mixture. Sometimes I actually